Okay. I think we're all good to go. We might have a couple more people join us, but it is already 6:31 and I want to make sure that I am optimizing our time together and not taking advantage of your time because like I mentioned last week, I'm very appreciative that you have set aside this time on Tuesday evenings, or if you're watching the replay, another time during the week for yourself to really prioritize you. I think it can be really hard to make sure that we're doing something for ourselves. And whether that's something like this, that's personal development or growth, or whether it's just reading a book or taking a walk or something that makes us happy and makes us feel like ourselves, it can be really hard right now with everything going on. Whether you have kids and you're transitioning from school year to summer, or whether you are trying to transition back to going back to work, it can just be really hard to prioritize. So kudos to you for doing that. And I'm excited to jump into our topic today. We will do a quick kind of how are you feeling from last week before we go into today's topic. But in case you weren't with us live last week, my slide will move forward quickly. Just the same housekeeping rules that we talked about, just staying on mute unless we are sharing examples. We will have time at the end for general Q&A. So if you have a question that you think of, just hang on tight until that time. Feel free to share anything you want in the chat, recommendations or questions or aha moments. It will be saved and uploaded to the Google Doc. The replay link will be added to the Google Drive later tonight. And as always, if you are having any technology issues, please feel free to email me. Like I mentioned in the welcome email, I am trying not to send you a million emails all the time with links and documents and all those kinds of things. That is the purpose of the Google Drive. It will all live in there. I did not drop today's document until later today, mostly because I just don't want you to like jump ahead and unless you're ready to move on. But let me know if you would like that maybe a little bit earlier. I know if it was me, I would maybe want 24 hours to make sure I had time to like print it out and get it ready to go. So I can do that, make sure I do that for next week. I just don't want to dump them all in on you like ahead of time. But if you're having any issues accessing that or any kind of technology issues, feel free to email me and I can always send you stuff via email if that is an issue for you. And then again, quick recap of the calendar. We are on the 8th, so picking the right goals. And here we go. Before we get into that though, I want to ask you how your mindset is doing. And if anybody would like to share from last week, if you chose an action step to help you work on your mindset, one of the mindsets, tell us which mindset you chose, what action step you chose, and if you felt like it made a difference. I'm gonna kind of expand this here. So if somebody would like to share, you are more than welcome to come off of mute and share if something worked for you last week. Everyone's being quiet tonight. They're like, I'm not quite ready to talk yet, Laken. I'm just here to listen to you. And that's okay too. You're also, feel free to drop it in the chat. If you're not in a place you don't want to come off of mute, you don't want to talk, feel free to drop it in the chat. I just wanted to give anyone a chance to share if there was something that they discovered, really worked for them with all, we talked about a lot of action items last week. And so I just wanted to give everyone that opportunity. Okay. Just also another reminder, this all builds on each other. We're doing it in this order on purpose. There's a method to the madness of starting with mindset, working on picking the goals, getting started, follow through. Like the order makes sense. But if you feel like you need to go back to a section at any point, either during the course or like down the road, it's always there for you. You'll always have the replay links to be able to go back and watch something. And so if there is a time, that you're working on something and you're like, wow, I notice that I'm struggling with this mindset as I'm working on it, you can always go back to that session and rewatch it and try and figure out how to kind of incorporate that. Hannah, I found some extra people on Instagram, YouTube to follow surrounding yourself with similar goals. I love that. I always recommend that the content that you're consuming is directly correlated with your goals. Like you'll find, even when I recommend people on Instagram and YouTube, regularly it's related to goals that I have. If you watch my quarterly favorites video from this year, I'm not trying to plug YouTube, but like the YouTube channels I recommended are weight loss related. The book I recommended is home related. Like the content I consume is very much equated to the goals that I have. Okay. Oh, and Sarah just commented, you incorporated having a grace for yourself and focus on the remind yourself phrase. It helped you reach your goal of working out 3 days last week and making healthier food choices. If you missed a day or ate something you shouldn't have, use that phrase and kept on going. I love that. And yes, cleaning for sure counts as a workout. Like sometimes I'm even tempted to turn on my Apple Watch when I'm cleaning because I know that it counts as a workout. For me, especially like vacuuming, like I am moving, like my whole body is moving. Anyways, thank you so much for sharing. I love that. The reminding yourself is a really helpful one for me as well. All right, let's jump in to tonight's topic about picking the right goals. And I almost hate that phrase because the right goal is going to be different for every single person at any single moment in time in their life. Right now, we are going to work on, I'm going to teach you tools and tricks and ways and methods to pick the right goals for you right now. And that's all that's going to be true, is that it's right for you and it's right for right now. And that can change. That can change tomorrow. It could change next year. And that's going to be different for every person. I am not here to tell you what are the right goals for you. Like picking the right goals isn't me saying this is what you should do. And in fact, I actually despise the word should, because should is, it implies that it's somebody else's priority, or it implies that it is something that you have to get done. Have to and should are not the same. There are things that we have to do. Doesn't mean that we should do them. Like we have to do them. There are things that we need, and then there are things that we want. None of those things, none of that is should. So we are eliminating the word should from our vocabulary. And today we are focusing on picking the right goals for you right now. I always have to kick it off with a quote. And this week's quote is a goal properly set is halfway reached. What I love about this quote, and especially how it relates to the course overall and the way that it's structured, is that we don't even talk about action until we're halfway through the course. Because getting our mindsets right and picking the right goals, that's half the battle. And that's the first step. And so half the course is getting that piece of the puzzle in place and picking the right goals and being in the right mindset. We're not even crossing the starting line until next week when we talk about getting started. And having the right mindset and then picking the right goals really can make such a difference in actually accomplishing those goals and actually making progress on those goals. So why is this a session? Like, can I just fill out my power sheets and that tells me what my goals are and then I'm done? And that is an option that we'll talk about in a little bit. But the biggest problem that this session is meant to help you overcome is choosing goals or focusing on goals for the wrong reasons. Most of the time, we choose goals based on external factors, based on other people, whether those people are people we know or people we don't. We choose goals based on the past. We choose goals based on our own mixed up thoughts about all kinds of things instead of the better reasons or the reasons that are actually going to get us to move forward in the process and make progress on those goals. So if you have the handout, grab the handout. If you don't, no worries, just write this down on a piece of paper. But I want you to just, without really thinking, I want you to jot down what are your top 3 goals for the rest of 2021. There is no wrong answer here. I'm not going to ask you to like analyze every little detail right now. Right now, I just want you to get them out of your head. If I asked you, what are your top 3 goals for the rest of the year? What would you say? You'll probably, I will start by sharing. You probably know what mine are because I already went into this year knowing that I had a top 3 and a minor or major 3 and a minor 3, and I had my top 3 goals. But one of the beauties of one of my goals is that I might be done with it at the end of this month, and then I can just focus on the other 2 goals for the rest of the year, which is exciting. So just because it's a top goal doesn't mean it's something that's going to take the entire year. It also doesn't mean that it's going to be done by the end of the year. That's always very true. So no right answer. I just want you to jot them down. All right, so there are three steps, three process to picking the right goals. The first one is creating a list of all the ideas. What are all the potential goals that you could have? Sometimes I get questions in my DMs that are like, what should my goals be? And I'm like, what? Like, because for me, this is never an issue. I never run out of ideas of what my goals could possibly be. So creating an idea list of all the potential goals. That's step one. Step two is narrowing it down because there are only so many hours in a day. There are only so many days in a year. So narrowing down our list to what realistically is going to be feasible in whatever the time frame that we're looking at. And then step three is prioritizing that. And whether that means prioritizing it for chronologically of how we're going to go throughout our year, and we're going to do this one first and then this one and this one, whether that means prioritizing this one is going to always take priority. If I'm going to choose between this activity and this activity, I'm always going to pick my number one goal. There's a lot of different ways that you can use the prioritization tools that I'm going to go through today and apply them to your goals. But let's start with number one, which is creating a list of potential goal ideas. What are some ways that we can create ideas for what our goals could possibly be? Well, the first one and the obvious one is using a goal setting tool. There are a lot of different goal setting tools that you can use to help you think about what your goals could be. And if you have been around, if you are here, you probably know that I love my power sheets. And this chart actually was a survey that I took from our Patreon community back in December when we were doing our goal action planning for the year. And the majority, just over 50% of the Patreon community is using the power sheets. And we've got probably about 25% are using the Moxie Life. A little sliver are using a combination of both. We have a little bit of a bigger sliver using no specific system. And then some of our community is just using a completely different goal setting tool. But the benefit of tools like these is they give you a framework. They give you guidance, they give you questions, they give you ways to come up with your own goals. And that's great. And if that works for you, it works for me. The power sheets work for me. And that is how I, for the foreseeable future, will continue to figure out what my goals could possibly be to get that starting goal idea list. If that's not for you, let's talk about a couple of other options. The first one is to create a personal list of categories. I feel like I want to underline the word personal on this slide because when I say categories, I don't mean taking a system like the Moxie Life and filling in those categories, or Amy Landino's planner, the Good Morning Good Life planner, has categories for goal ideas. That's great. Those planners are great. Those tools are great. But what if you created your own categories? What if you said, I'm going to make sure that I have goals in these 5 categories? There is no right answer to the number of categories, and the categories can be whatever you want. And they are just meant to give you guidance and to give you ideas and structure on what to think of when you're trying to come up with your goals. I jotted down just a couple of ideas here on this slide, but again, the list is limitless. And always feel free to personalize it. Maybe instead of a parenting category, you have a category for each of your kids. Maybe, and for me, instead of business, I would just call it Play with Laken. Like, it doesn't need to be called business. I like that better than calling it work, right? That's more fun. Coming up with your own set of categories could be a great way for you to create your goal ideas as you're going through your process. And these categories could change. They don't have to be the same every month, every quarter, every year. You could change them up if you need to, or you could sit down at the beginning of the year and say, okay, these are the categories that I'm going to focus on for the year. And then you set your goals within those. But they're just a good starting point. They're a good place to start brainstorming some ideas. And what I want to hammer home here is this category list is yours, your specific categories that are important to you and that you want to set goals in, not because the universe says you should have financial goals, not because society says that you should have household goals. If that's not important to you right now, it doesn't have to be a category on your list. And then the last option or place to start when trying to figure out what are some of the goal options for you is to ask yourself some questions. Now, all of these things that I'm talking about, using a tool, categories, or asking yourself these questions, not mutually exclusive. You could do all 3, you could do 2 of the 3, you can overlap them. It's not meant to be like you have to pick just one of these categories. When you're answering these questions, I'm going to give you a list of questions here. Answer them in whatever way works best for you. If you're a journaler, write them down. If you're a thinker, meditate on them, sit and think about them. If you're a talker like me, talk them, like talk them out loud, speak them out loud, I think is what I meant to say. Whether that's recording it on your phone, just start talking about it, start brainstorming the answers to these questions. Get in the shower, start talking. If you're comfortable, talk with another person. If you want to talk tonight, we can talk through one of these questions during our Q&A session, and I will probe you and we will continue to dig deep on one of these questions. And maybe that'll help you figure out maybe some goal options for you if you're comfortable talking with somebody else. But whatever way you get ideas out best, do that when you answer these questions. So the first one, which was some of the pre-work that I gave you, a quick video, and encourage you to do this activity before we got started, is what does your ideal day look like? And when I say ideal day, I don't mean like the best day ever, you're not working and you get to go to whatever restaurant you want. No. That's fun. And that's a fun question to answer if you're ever like on a road trip. It's fun. Sam and I have done that before. What I mean here is like, what is your ideal every day? That's what I should put on the slide. What does your ideal every day look like? What time do you wake up? Are you the only one up? Are there other people up when you're up? What do you have for breakfast? Do you have breakfast? Do you go to work? What are you doing for work? Could be what you do now, could be something totally different from what you do now. What do are you commuting to work? Are you walking? Are you on the train? Are you driving? How are you getting to work? What are you doing when you get home from work? What is that wind down routine? Are you working the full day? Actually, should be the question first. Are you working full day? Or are you working part of the day? What time do you want to be done with work? What do you want to do after work? What do you want that to look like? Now, I don't want you to be constrained by time and money. And by time, I mean like you couldn't wake up and live this day tomorrow. It would take you time to get there, not time like there's more than 24 hours in a day. That's unrealistic. I mean, it is something that you could possibly get to at some point if you made the right steps to get there. And don't be constrained by money. If you want to have Starbucks every day, put that in your ideal day. What would your ideal day look like? And I know that once you're done with this activity, because I've done it for myself, it feels impossible. You're like, that's not going to work. Like for me, one of my things is I would love to have Starbucks every day. That's one of my things. I would also love to work out like between 10 and 11. That's like my peak energy. And when I want to exert that energy is between 10 and 11. But in my current lifestyle, I cannot do that. I cannot work out between 10 and 11. And so that is something that I would have to change or work towards if I wanted to accomplish that. So when you map out your ideal day, it might feel impossible, and that's okay. That's not the point of this. You're not creating this ideal day also to like bring yourself down. The purpose is to give you some ideas of small steps you could take to get to those places. Until I realized that working out between 10 and 11 was like my prime time, I would have never thought I wanted to work for myself. Like I thought I like working for someone else. I like my job. I like my company. Like I'm good working for someone else. But those two things conflict. I can't work for someone else and work out between 10 and 11. So if that's really my ideal day, then what has to happen for that to be feasible? I would have to work for myself. If I want Starbucks every day, well, I not likely need to live within a close distance to a Starbucks. And I need to budget for 4, 5, 6, depending on what type of drink and how big your drink is you get. My preferred drinks at Starbucks actually range anywhere from 3 to 6. If I just get tea, it's 3 and anywhere to 6. If I get like a large latte, I need to budget that in my budget in order to make that happen. Is that important to me? Is that something I want to work towards to get there? Maybe it is, if that's my ideal day, if that's how I want to get there. So it just gives you ideas of goals to set to inch your way towards that ideal day. Next question. Where do you want to be in 1, 3, 5, 10? You could pick some arbitrary number here, by the way. Like if you have kids that are going to be out of the house in 8 years, maybe that's your number. Where do you want to be? What do you want your life to look like? And sometimes this can feel very overwhelming because it's super far away. Again, this is not meant to make you feel stressed. This is not meant to make you feel like those things are impossible. It's meant to give you guiding posts to where you could start to get to. For me, I've always answered this question with, well, within the time frames obviously gotten a lot shorter. I've always wanted to be a mom. And that's an ultimate goal at some point. When I first did this exercise, it was probably closer to 10 years. Now it's a lot closer. But what are the things I can do now to get prepared for that thing that's down the road? I may not be accomplishing that thing that I put in the 1, 3, 5, 10, home ownership, being a mom, whatever it is. But I can start doing other things now that can help me get to that place. What would you do if you could not fail? Better question. What would you start if you could not fail? If I was a genie and I came to you and I said, I am an all-powerful genie, except my powers only work one way. You get to pick something and I will make sure that you do not fail at that thing. What would that be? What would you pick? That might give you an idea of some goals that you could set. Have you ever watched a movie, read a book, watched a TV show, whatever, some sort of story plot, and you're watching the hero go along, the hero in the story, the protagonist of the story, and you just want to yell at them and you just do blank already. Just do that thing already and everything will be okay. Just maybe it's don't do something and everything will be okay. Have you ever felt that way watching a movie or reading a book? I feel like I yell at the protagonist all the time because me, from my big picture view, can see exactly what that person or that character, that protagonist, like what they need or want. Like, what is that thing that they just need to do it? What is that thing for you? If you took a step back and you were observing your life as a story, what would someone tell you? And maybe someone has told you, maybe someone's told you, you just need to blank already. I mean, I've had people tell me those things before. You just need to do this. And it's not a should, because I don't have to if I don't want to. But from somebody who's standing from the outside, they might be able to tell that it's better and that it's the best option for you. And then the last question is somewhat similar to kind of the mindset of the power sheets, but what do you want your legacy to be? Morbidly, what do you want your obituary to say? What do you want people to remember about you? Not like your list of accomplishments. And as an Enneagram type 3, trust me, I struggle with this because I'm like, well, I want them to say this and this and like all these like achievement things. No. What do I want them to talk about? What are the stories I want people to tell? And think about how your goals can help you achieve that. All right, so now we have this big list of ideas, all these things that we want to do. It's massive, it's large. Let's start crossing some of those things off. What are some of the things that we're going to just focus in on right now? And what I want you to think about is the impact that your goals are going to have on a number of different things, because all goals have impact, positive or negative, hopefully positive. They're all going to impact something. So how does this goal impact your daily life? This is actually a tool that I use when I'm making purchases, especially large purchases. I think to myself, is this going to impact my daily life? And if the answer is yes, the value threshold for the cost goes way down. Versus if this is not going to impact my daily life, it's much different. And it doesn't mean that I say no. It doesn't mean that it's something that I am not going to buy, like a nice suitcase. That's not something that impacts my daily life, but I still bought it because I justified the value. But if it's going to make a big impact on your daily life, it might be something that you move up on the priority list. How's this going to impact your life 20 years from now? Now, even if it's not, like even if you say, well, it's not, that doesn't mean you have to cross it off. I'm not saying that you have to cross it off, but thinking about its longevity impact, again, might move it up a little bit, or might say, you know what, maybe that's not so important to me. How is this goal going to impact other people? Hopefully positively. Hopefully none of your goals are impacting people negatively, but is it even going to impact other people? There are goals that I have that are just for me, right? There are goals that don't impact other people. Now, if I really thought about it, right, if it makes me happy, it's going to impact other people and it's going to have a ripple effect. But there are goals that directly impact other people a lot quicker than other ones. And so maybe if that's important to me, maybe that goal gets moved up a little bit. How is this goal going to impact other goals? There are definitely goals that once I accomplish them, they make other goals easier, right? Like I have a goal of buying a house. Well, a goal of getting a budget in place is going to help me achieve that goal of buying a house. And so is this goal going to have impact on other goals? Maybe that's a goal that you make a priority. Losing weight and focusing on my physical health is going to give me more energy to then work on my other goals. So maybe I prioritize that goal now to be in a better place physically to work on my other goals. And then the last question is just, how do the goals impact your values? What are your deep down core values that are important to you? And you can Google this. We're not going to go into like a value workshop here about what value options are. But at the end of the day, are these goals something that are going to make a difference in whatever you value, whether that's the environment, whether that's social justice, whether that's loving your family, and that's it. That's your number one value is focusing on your family. Does this goal help that? All right. One of my favorite exercises to do when trying to decide if this goal is important to me or not is called the why exercise. And it's inspired by all of the lovely toddlers. If you've ever been around a toddler where they're just starting to get curious about things, if you don't know, I am the oldest of 9 siblings. So I've lived through a lot of toddler years. And they're just starting to get curious about things, and they can finally start talking, and they're just trying to understand the world around them. And so they ask you a question. It's a pretty reasonable question. And you give them what you feel like is a pretty reasonable answer. And then they go, why? Okay, well, here's why. Because blah, 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 blah. But why? Okay, well, now you're starting to get annoyed because blah, blah, blah. You're trying to come up with another why. But why? And it feels like they keep asking you over and over and over again, but why, until you get to an answer that like they're satisfied with. Do that with your goals. So when you decide that a goal is important to you, I want you to dig deep on the why. Everybody who talks about goals talks about the why. You got to have an important why. Remember your why, blah, blah, blah. Yes, all that is true and important. But what's more important is what that why is and how important that why is to you. Let's go back to my example of working for myself. Why do I want to do that? Well, I just told you, surface level, it's because I want to work out from 10 to 11. And so I need to work for myself to do that. Okay, but why? Because really, is that why going to get me out of bed in the morning to work on my business? Probably not. Like I can work out another time of the day. It's probably not the end of the world. Okay, but what about having the flexibility to be at home with my kids once I have kids? Okay, but why? So that I don't miss those moments with my kids when they need someone to do the school party. The teachers need help at school and I can go volunteer because I own my business and I can go do that. Okay, but why is that important? Well, because my mom never did that. And it made me sad when my mom never volunteered at school because she worked full time for somebody else. Well, there we go. That's going to get me out of bed in the morning when I don't want to work on my business. So what I want you to do is I want you to pick one of your goals that you wrote down. It doesn't have to be the one you wrote in the number 1 spot. It can be any of those 3. Not important which one you pick. Just pick one. And I want you to write down the first why that comes to your head. And then I want you to ask yourself again, but why? And I want you to dig a little deeper. Okay, but why? And I want you to dig a little deeper until you get to a why that really is important. A why that makes you want to drop everything and only focus on that goal. I'm just pausing for a second so you can fill in those answers. This is something that you can do with any goal. It can be a small goal. It doesn't have to be big goals like that. I mean, the example I gave is a really big, specific to me, life-changing example. It could be as small as like, whether I move houses or not. Okay, but why? And dig down deep. Okay, before we move on to prioritization, I want to interrupt our why session to talk about goals versus tasks, because this is a question I get a lot. Should I be putting this? See that? Should I be putting this goal in my power sheets? Is it a task and not a goal? And so I want to go through kind of my mindset on what I consider a goal versus a task, and some tips on trying to figure that out. And by the way, for me, when it's a goal, that's when it goes in my power sheets and it gets that extra kind of gold star, extra like goal aura around it, basically, that makes it a goal, versus a task is something that just goes in my calendar, goes in my planner. So for me, a goal is something that I want to do. A task is something that I have to do. Like, it has to get done at some point. And then if that is a task, if it has to get done, it just gets put in my calendar. The things that I usually put on my goals list are things I want to do, not things I have to do. Goals are things that also, in that same vein, likely won't get done if I don't prioritize them and I don't make them a goal. Tasks will eventually get done. Eventually. It may not be in the best way possible. It may not be on the most timely of methods, but it will eventually get done. For example, I always end up having some sort of like meal planning on my goals list. Well, that doesn't mean that we're not going to eat. It just means that I'm not going to plan them. And then we will order in or we'll figure it out. So it's the meal planning is still a goal, even though eating is a have to do. Does that make sense? Goals typically will have a larger impact on my life, something that's going to move the needle in some area of my life. Whereas tasks, they usually don't have a long-term impact, something that needs to get checked off. Goals, again, more of a long-term impact. Tasks are more of a short-term. Goals are things that I want to light you up. I want, especially after you just did that why exercise, goals should be something, goals are things that make you excited and make you want to do them, where tasks are like, I don't want to do this. I need to do this. I have to do this. And so I'm going to, but it's not exciting. One of the things that I always try to remind people of too is that a task can be a goal if it is something that you want to improve on and get better at, like my meal planning example or my cleaning routine. That is something that would eventually get done because we're not just going to live in a mess, but I want to improve it and I want to prioritize it. So then it gets shifted over to tasks or to goals temporarily as I work on it and I improve it and I make it better. And then once it's structured and improved, it gets scooched on over back to tasks and things that it will just get done all the time. One final tip here. If you are sitting there struggling with a thing, an item, and you are not sure whether it belongs on the goal list or the task list, just pick one. Try not to sit there and overthink it. Analysis paralysis is going to be more of a handicap than a benefit. For now, just put it in one of the lists and keep going. All right, let's prioritize. So we had our whole big list of goals. Hopefully we shrunk it down a little bit, but now we still have a lot of goals that we want to work on. And so we're going to prioritize those. And like I said, this could be, I'm going to prioritize them in terms of, I'm going to start with this one and put the other ones aside for now, or I'm going to pick this one when I have the option to do one or the other. So what are these ways that we can prioritize our goals? The first one is time bound. Something has to get done by a certain date. For example, you're planning a wedding. I'm planning a wedding. Has to get done by a certain date if that ends up on my goal list. To be honest, I have since moved my goals to tasks, to my wedding stuff to tasks. It is no longer a goal for me anymore. It's just something that has to get done, will get done eventually. It's going to the task list. But there are still goals that are time bound. You have a goal to run a marathon. And so you need to prepare for that marathon. That's a time bound goal. So that one, will take priority as it pertains to the timing that it needs to get done. Number two is the easiest or the hardest. And I know you're like, no, Laken, just tell me which one to do first. Everybody is different. Everybody is different, whether they benefit from starting with the easiest or the hardest. So, for example, there are some people, it's me, I'm people, who has to start with the smallest, easiest task on their to-do list. Because if I don't get that momentum from that small, easy thing, it's a lot harder for me to do those other things. So I need to start with the easiest thing on my to-do list. However you tackle your to-do list, I advise you to tackle your goals in the same way. Start with the easiest goal. Start with the easiest step of that goal. It's kind of like the Dave Ramsey snowball method. I'm not a big proponent of Dave Ramsey in general, but his method, which is more focused on mindset of getting rid of debt, is that you focus on the smallest debt first, regardless of interest rate, to get that win and to get that check mark of that debt being gone and then moving on to the next one. Same thing can go with goals. But I know it's not the answer you want to hear. There's a lot of value in starting with the hardest goal. If that works for you, if you've ever read the book Eat That Frog, that might be a better option for you. It's not for me, could be for you. What about the goal you're most excited about? It kind of goes in the same vein as the easiest option, but getting started with a goal that you're the most excited about. Prioritize that. Prioritize something that just makes you happy. How about the goal with the biggest impact? We talked about all those ways that goals can impact other goals. So which one touched all those categories? Maybe that's the one that gets to prioritize first. Now, all the things that I've talked about so far are all very qualitative. They're all very kind of vague and kind of I'm feeling out which goal I think I want to prioritize. It's kind of a feeling exercise. If you are a qualitative person, all great options. If you're a quantitative person, you could calculate it. And the way that I would recommend you doing that is you come up with a set number of qualifications or categories. I listed some examples here. You could use the same ones. You could pick different ones. You could do less. I would not recommend doing more than 5. I did this exercise with something else besides goals, something business related, and I loved how it worked, that I wanted to equate it to goals. So basically what she did was you have all your options on one column, and then you have all these categories across the top. The categories I included here are time, how long is it going to take me to accomplish this goal? How excited am I to do this goal? How difficult is this goal? The 1-year impact and the 20-year impact. And then for each goal, you're going to rate this from 1 to 5. 5 being the best and 1 being the worst in terms of each of these categories, right? 5 being the most excited, 1 being least excited, so on and so forth. And then you add it all up, and whichever goal has the highest score, that's the goal that you start with first. That is the goal that you prioritize. It's just a fun exercise. I've actually never done it with my goals. I wonder if I would end up with the same prioritization. I always just go with my gut there on prioritization, but if you're a quantitative person and you want to dig in and have a little bit more of a structure, you could do it this way too. All right. Are you ready for the best part of this whole thing? The best part of picking your goals. You get to change your mind whenever you want. Whenever you want, you can change your mind. Just because you pick to have a goal for this week, this month, this quarter, this year, you can change your mind at any time. It is not something that is set in stone. Even if it's written down on a piece of paper, it is still not required that you focus on that thing until the end of time. It's an ebb and flow. And if you feel the need to change your mind because something in your life changes, you can go back to the beginning and start over and pick some new goals. Also, because this is just a controversial thing, but the check marks, Sarah, I know. So when I say change your mind, okay, I mean, if you pick, this is going to be your goal for the month, and then you want to change your mind next month, you can change your mind mid-month too. I firmly believe that. I have definitely gone about before where I've crossed off goals on my list. The check marks are nice, but the progress is more important. And if it's not working and it's no longer a priority for you, or something or really, I feel like what happens more often than not is just something else takes more of a priority. Something else comes in. Like I always thought, like I was very thankful that I got engaged in October because then I could just make wedding planning part of the following year's goal. If I gotten engaged in say like a February or a March, hello, all of a sudden that takes priority and that's going to take up time. And I only have so much time. So whatever goals I'd set for that calendar year, I was going to have to cross one or two of them off because there just wasn't going to be time. Even this year, if I'm honest, when I thought like January, February, 2020, Laken, like a lot of my time this year wasn't going to be taken up from wedding planning because I was supposed to already be married at this point. And there were a lot of things that were related to that had to get pushed back a year because of the wedding being pushed back a year. So you just never know. So I'm just letting you know that it's okay. Susan, can you say more about the 1 to 5 scale for each element? Yes, I absolutely can. Yeah, I didn't want to, for anybody who didn't like that idea, I didn't want to spend too much time going through all of them, but let me click back and let me tell you kind of what. So time is kind of, it's backwards. So if you think about it this way, the bigger the number, I don't want to say the better the goal is, but the more prioritized that goal could be. So for time, 5 would be like, you're going to accomplish this quickly. This goal doesn't take very long for me to get to. It's something I can like, has a pretty shorter start and finish. Whereas 1 is going to take a very long time, whatever. And I mean, it's going to be different for different people and different goals, whether something's going to be a 1 or a 5. Excitement, a 5 is going to be, I'm the most excited. And 1 is like, I'm putting this goal here. I'm like a little bit excited, but like mostly not excited, but it's a goal that I like, I have a good why. I'm just not excited about it. Difficulty is how hard is this goal going to be for you, which that can somewhat relate to excitement and time, but it doesn't mean a goal can be excite you and be short time frame, but it could still be really hard. It could still be a really hard goal. So 5 is going to be the like least difficult and 1 is going to be the most difficult, right? So 5 is always good. 1 is always bad. And then 1 year impact, that is it's up to you. So 1 year impact, if it's going to impact you within a year, more likely, then it's going to be closer to the 5. If it is not going to have a big 1 year impact, then it's going to be closer to the 1. And then same with a 20 year impact. Is this going to matter in 20 years? Yes. Closer to the 5? No. Closer to the 1. Does that help? And you could pick other things, like you could pick other categories, like resources. Is this how much in terms of resources is this going to take for me, whether that's financial or time resources? That's another idea. I'm sure there are other categories I could come up with if I tried. Okay, good. All right. Let's go to my unpopular opinion here. I don't think every goal has to be a SMART goal. If you don't know what SMART is, it's an acronym that is used a lot in the business world. It stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. And I think we put too much pressure on ourselves when we make every goal a SMART goal. It becomes way, way too easy for us to fail when it's all of those things. I know that's backwards from the normal SMART goal thinking, right? The normal SMART goal thinking is, well, if I have all these things, then I'm going to be more likely to succeed. And I just think we're giving ourselves more opportunities to fail when we fit all of our goals into this SMART acronym. Now, next week, when we talk about action steps, I think your action steps need to be the equivalent. It's not SMART. I have a new acronym for you, but your action steps need to be some of those things, but your goal itself does not. What is more important to me when selecting your goals is that it is, and this should maybe be its own slide, is that your why is really, really important to you, that you're clear with the words that you choose, like we talked about last week, on what the goal actually is for you. Is it focusing on your mental health or your physical health, or is it losing weight? That's it. Like, that's it. Those are the only two things, is that the why is big enough and the words work for you. a true goal setting, smart goal person, if I told them I had a goal this year to lose weight, they would freak. They would be like, wait, why is it so vague? Where's your number? Where's your time bound? Where's your, like, all these things? And I'd be like, I don't have one, because I am going, if I set, I'm going to lose X amount of pounds, and then we got to this point halfway through the year and I wasn't halfway there, I would give up. Whereas I have had definitely some setbacks this year. We've had a lot of things going on in our family, and I've had a lot of setbacks. I'm not giving up, because for me, the goal is just to lose weight. So this is me getting off my soapbox. Doesn't have to be a SMART goal. Okay. One final tip related to goal action items. Sorry, not goal action items, goals in general, goals. Keep a running list of ideas. The questions that we talked about earlier, things come up in your life that you think, oh, this is something that I want to work on. Oh, this is a goal that I have. And it can be really easy to have shiny object syndrome and get distracted from the goals that you are working on. Now, that doesn't mean that if something really important pops up and you got to make room for it, you make room for it. But if there's a scenario where there's something that excites you, put it down on a list. And then when you refresh your goals, either monthly or quarterly or annually, whenever it feels like it fits, right, to revisit that goal idea list. For me, it's annually. I have 2 levels, right? I actually have 3 levels of goal list ideas. So let me tell you that. Maybe I should put that on the slide. I have 2 places for big goal ideas, and because I have personal ones and then I have business ones. And those are ones that I won't look at until the new year. Like, those are goals that they're not going to happen this year, and I know that. But I have a place for them. For me, it's just on my iPad. I just have a page on my notes page on my iPad where I keep that running list of ideas. Personal ones include a lot of things like travel, learning a language, getting a hobby, like those kinds of things. Business, there's a lot of business ideas I have for Plan with Laken that just aren't going to happen in 2021. Then from those idea lists that I keep all the time, I picked my 2021 goals, and I have my 2021 goals. Then I have a place for all the quarterly goal ideas that fall within each of my 2021 goals. And I have a running list of ideas, some of them more than others. Some of them don't have any ideas in them, but I have a list of ideas. And then I have a running list each month for all of those quarterly goals that I've chosen. So I can jot down ideas. Those are really more for action steps, not really for goals, but this applies to action steps too. But keep a list somewhere. And it doesn't have to be as complicated as mine. It doesn't have to be all those tiers, but just a place where you can jot down goal ideas. That way, when things come to you, you don't forget about them and you have a place to write them down. It could be an easy as a notes app on your phone. It could be a notes page in your planner. It can be a Google Doc. It could be a Word document that you save on your computer. Whatever works best for you, just keep a running list of goal ideas somewhere. Okay, action steps. So the first action step that I want you to think about, what's your number 1 goal now for 2021? It could be the same goal. We could have just talked for the last 50 minutes and it could be the exact same goal that it was at the beginning. That's fine. That is completely possible. But maybe it's not. Maybe something sparked in you in the last 50 minutes that you were like, no, now this is my number one goal for 2021. And if you would like, I would love for you to share in the chat what your number 1 goal is for 2021. For the last 6 months, obviously, of 2021. There's still a lot of time, by the way. You can do a lot in 6 months. Get stronger. I love the choice of words, Terry. I love that. Such a good one. Lose weight. Yeah. Steward your finances with intention for long-term security. Cheney, that is a very well-written, beautiful goal. I love that, there's an intention there. And having that written out, using those specific words. Lose weight, eat healthier. I love the specificity there, focusing on the eating. It can be so easy to get caught up in these big picture things instead of just getting niching down on those goals. To not feel so chaotic. Ooh, Stacy, that's a good one. Sally, equally to lose 20 pounds and write out your chapter outline for your book and have at least 3 chapters done. That's awesome. Hannah, create a physical health routine that promotes movement and healthy food, even if I don't lose weight. Ooh, that's a good one. That's a really good one. I love these. You guys, what I love is seeing how different. Obviously, we have some similarities. There's a lot of us that are working on our lose weight goal, but it's what people prioritize is it always amazes me. And I bet the whys behind your lose weight is not the same as somebody else's or even mine. And I love that too. Okay. Couple other action steps I have for you. These are not things that I'm going to have you do right this second, but there's little space to check them off on your handout, things that I want you to, I encourage you to do over the next 7 days. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. First one is to revisit your 2021 goals. Just spend some time with them. It kind of works out. We're almost at a quarterly refresh anyway. Just look them over and just think about them a little bit. Is there something on there that you might want to change the wording on? Is there something that you might want to cross off? Is there something you might want to add? Maybe something came up for you today that you were like, I kind of want to add this. Guess what? You can do that in the last 6 months. You can add a goal if you want to add a goal, but just take some time with your 2021 goals. Number 2 is ask yourself that why. Do the why exercise, but why? And get to a why for each goal that really resonates with you. A why that you know deep down is important. And then the last one is to just start a running list of goal ideas for yourself. Figure out what that structure looks like for you. Is that in your phone? Is that in your planner? Where is this gonna live? It could live in your power sheets. If you're using power sheets, it could live in your Moxie Life. You could put it on some sticky notes and any of those places, but figure out how you're going to keep your running list of goal ideas, and just start it. Even if it has nothing on it right now, but except like a title, goal ideas, get it started. All right. I did not go over time tonight like I did last week. So I'm going to close out the PowerPoint in just a second to ask if anybody has any questions. You are welcome, as always, to ask them now. You can come off mute and ask questions. If it is more of a private question or something that you think of during the week, feel free to email me, or you can always save them for the Q&A that is next Thursday. Allison, yeah. Those are the action steps. They also are on the handout, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, let's stop the share and pull us all back so I can see all of your beautiful faces. If you have your camera turned off, any questions? Are you like super overwhelmed? It can be about prioritizing. It can be back about mindset. If you want to go back to that topic and you have a question, it can be maybe about a specific goal. We are going to talk way more in depth about action steps next week. So that might be way clearer when it, if you feel like there's a goal that's on your list right now that you feel is not feasible, it doesn't feel attainable, but it is on your list and you have a good why. I hope after next week's action step session, it'll feel more attainable. Like you'll be able to see how that could be broken down. Yes, Hannah, I mentioned that at the beginning about uploading the handout earlier. I meant to upload it yesterday, and it just, yes, again, the interns, if you were here at the beginning, it was the intern started this week. Her first day was yesterday. I was very distracted with her. And then by the time I was done with work, I just wanted to be like checked out of the whole world. So I did not get it in the Google Drive. I'll make sure to get it up earlier for next week, so you can always have a place to print it out. But anyways, just to say, yeah, if you feel like something feels overwhelming, hopefully next week will help. Allison, my goal is around work-life balance. Be more consistent with prioritizing work and not doing things that are low value, and have more time for priorities outside of work. That's a lot wrapped up into one goal. I mean, super important. Obviously, work-life balance is like incredibly helpful. One of the analogies I heard once, and I can't remember where I heard this, is that it's never really balance. It's more of like a teeter-totter. And like, if you've ever been on one of those, like, it's rare that you're both like sitting in exactly an even line. And that would be an ideal state, right? That we are balancing perfectly on a teeter-totter between work and personal life. And that's just like not very often. And we usually, you tilt one way or the other a little bit at all times. And the goal is just to have it be pretty close. You don't want to go fully one way or the other. I mean, I guess if we could all go fully personal life, that might be nice. But like, yeah, you gotta work. But it's about like knowing that it's okay, that it kind of balances off, even if I'm talking like an hour a week, like it just teeters a little bit, that some weeks you lean a little bit more one way and some weeks you might lean a little bit more this way. But over the course of a month, a quarter, you are getting that balanced out on average, I think is the best way to think about that. But I think, Allison, that next week when we talk about the different ways to break down goals and how to create action plans, it'll be more clear on how to pick some steps to actually implement that goal. Because I know that sometimes those types of goals feel so big picture that you aren't able to really figure out a step. Like, how do I start? How do I even begin with this one? So, Stacy, your puppy is precious.
So I have a kind of a question around the categories idea and prioritizing with categories. One thing that I noticed when I was starting my goals for this year was that I felt the need to have a goal in every category. And in a way, like I think the things that I picked were good, but at the same time, I feel like they're taking up space. One being like cherish relationships with family and friends. And like I feel like it's super vague and I just put it on there to put something into that category and really maybe didn't have any intention to do much more than I currently am. So, and maybe I don't quite have a specific question, but it's like, how do I stop being the completionist and the perfectionist
Yeah.
to like, okay, do I have a goal in this category? So I like the idea of categories, but how do you then keep
Not feel that
from
way.
making sure, yeah, that you have something in every category?
Yeah. That is why I tried to hammer home, and I would, if you're going to go the category route, I think you are better off picking your own categories at the beginning of the year and making them specific to you, and then making the number specific to you. And maybe it's only 3, or maybe it's even only 1 or 2. Like the issue that I do, and I mean, don't get me wrong, this is not necessarily like I'm digging at the Moxie Life system, because I know that she has created that system for a purpose and there are lots of reasons behind it. But for people that are completionists, you can feel that struggle to fill in every category. And that's why if you're going to go the categories route, picking your own categories. And really the purpose of it is just to give you a starting off point so that you can think of ideas in any given categories, and not like I have to. And if you are in control of the categories, you can eliminate it. If you like get to it, if you start by saying, okay, here are the like 4 categories that are somewhat important to me, and then you get to the one category and you're like, I don't really have a goal there, cross it off and like don't fill that in. Now that's easier when you're doing it yourself in whatever, a piece of paper and a notebook. Whereas if you're in a system that's
Yeah.
got these categories, leaving those things blank can be very difficult. I feel you on having blank space. I would fill that space with something else that's not a goal. That way you're still filling in the space, but you're not taking up time in your goal life to to work on that goal that you just put in there because you felt like you had to. So maybe it's pictures, like in the friends and family, maybe just put some pictures in there of your friends and family. Maybe it's a quote. Maybe it's just like a little thank you note to somebody. Like, I'm grateful for these people and here's why, or something. I'm using your example specifically.
Right. Yeah.
So that you don't have to look at that blank space.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's helpful. And then kind of a question on your major and minor goals.
Yeah.
Um, how did you kind of figure that out? Or is that something you're going to cover down the road?
No, I didn't. I don't have plans to talk about that. So I can definitely answer that question. So that this is the first year that I've done that. And for me, it was really about the fact that I found myself last year making action steps related to all my goals equally, and then not making as much progress on the goals that I knew were the most important because I was so focused on all of them. And so that's why this year I said I am going to make 3 the major and 3 the minor. And it's not an exact science, which is weird for me, the math person, but it's not like each month I can only have this many of the minor and this many of the major. But when I pick the quarterly goals, I for sure, the minors are always way less intense. Like the actual quarterly goal is always it's going to be way less time intense than the whatever I picked for the major goal. And then that kind of plays out in the months where I do less things. And then I keep that in mind if I'm picking between 2 things, right? So like spending less or spending thoughtfully is my finance goal for the year, but losing weight is a more important goal. So when I had the option to go take a dance class that was $25, I chose the dance class and I prioritized the major goal over the minor goal. And I mean, it obviously fit my budget and all those things. I'm not saying to go like spend money on the goal just because your finance is a less important goal. Well, for you, that's not the case. Your finance is your more important goal, right? So in that case, if you have another goal that's more of a minor, you're going to choose the less expensive option because you're prioritizing that finance goal. And it's just kind of when they do butt heads, because they do, and they butt heads in time as a resource, they butt heads in money as a resource, and I always prioritize the major goals over the minor goals in that sense.
Okay.
Again, not an exact science, but it's working for me this year. That is for sure. It doesn't mean that I'm going to do it every year from forever. I might maybe I pick this year, it happened to be pretty and 3 and 3. Maybe next year it's 1 and 5 or 2 and 4. Or I think I always want to make sure I have the highest priority things labeled so that, again, that is number 1 or number 2 and 3. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome. Hannah, if you're having issues with a follow through on a certain goal, should you maybe refresh the goal or work on something else for a while? Well, follow through is session 4. We will definitely go through all of my tips and skills on following through on the plan that you set, that we're going to set next week. But if you're feeling like it's something that you want to focus on something else for a while, that might just be your answer. Like if that feels right. I used to never be a gut person. Or I think I said this somewhere. I don't know if I said this last week or did I say this on a live? I know Sarah's like, yeah, you've said this before. I used to not be a gut person. Okay. But your gut is just your brain making a decision very quickly with all the information that is already stored in your brain. So if your gut is telling you that you should focus on something else for a while, then do that. You can always come back to it. That's the beauty of being able to change your mind. And that's what I did this quarter with food. I got a little burnt out with tracking food in Q1. And I was like, I need a break. And have I made as much progress this quarter? No. Have I made some? Yes. I've made some progress, but not as much. But I just needed a break. And I knew I could feel it. I could feel that I needed to pivot a little bit. And so I would go with your gut, but check in with yourself and your gut after module 4 and see if you can use any of those tools to work on your follow through. And if you want to give it one more go and try it again, otherwise you can always come back to it. like the other, and that's the other problem I think sometimes when I feel like the Moxie Life system does benefit is changing your mind after a week versus the power sheets. You got to stick it out for a month. Has its pros and cons. There are definitely times that I would give up on something a week into it when I should stick it out for the rest of the month, not should. Why I would benefit from sticking out. For example, last month, tracking both mine and Sam's finances, I didn't do it for the whole first week. And I may have quit had it not been a monthly thing and like there were going to be check marks for the rest of the time. But remember that it's always there for you to try something for a week and then change your mind. Like, I know it's not pretty on the check marks, I know, but like your journey is more important than all the check marks looking pretty. I gave that up a long time ago when I realized I was never going to have everything checked off. There was never going to be a month that I checked off every single thing. So I gave up on the pretty at that point. That's why I do the dots. I don't know, the dots make me feel like at least I'm putting something there, even if it's not a check mark. That's why I like the dots. But both of those books, Sarah in the chat talked about Gifts of Imperfection and Fear is My Homeboy. I think I need to reread Fear is My Homeboy. It's been over a year and I'm like, I highlighted it the first time. So I feel like I could like skim it. Like, I could go back and just like check what I highlighted, check what I made notes about. I just feel like there's so many good things in both of those books. So many good like mindset shifts. Any other questions about prioritizing? You don't have to go change all your goals right now. Some of these tools in the middle of the year, you're like, and I already set my goals for 2021. I can't do anything about that. Like, you can, but if you don't want to, that's okay. These are tools that you can use for quarterly refreshes, monthly refreshes, or even if you save it till December and you work on it in December, you can utilize these tools in December when it's time to figure out what your full annual goals are. All right. Well, if you have any other questions, you can always shoot me an email. You can save them for the Q&A next week. Otherwise, you have 20 minutes back in your evening. Maybe you can go work on some of your goal related things or just an action. Just maybe like go take the umph and go do something, go do an action. And I hope that this is, like I mentioned at the beginning, probably not my favorite because this is the module I struggle with the most at this point. Prioritizing is so hard for me because I want to do all the goals all the time, all the time. And there's just not that many hours in a day. I have to prioritize between a full-time job and a business, which is a goal, but there's still only so many hours in a day. And so to the extent that the prioritization helps you nail down what's really important to you right now. And it doesn't have to be forever. It's temporary. It's what am I going to focus on right now? 2022 is going to be here before we know it. So do not feel bad if there is something that you just put off to 2022. Like, it's going to be there. I'm going to do it next year and it's fine. And maybe by the time we get there, you'll realize like, maybe not. Maybe I don't actually need to work on that thing, or maybe that's not important to me anymore. But it is okay. I am allowing us to push things off and to let things go that may have felt like something that we wanted to do at one point, or something that we've always had, like a goal that we've always had and put on every goal list ever for the last however many years. Maybe that's not actually a goal that we want to do. Maybe when we start asking ourselves why, it's not really that important anymore. So, all right. Lisa, I think I'm going to put aside a big goal you've had for a couple years and you can always go back to it later. I love that. You can always go back to it later. And when I think, and I've said this a million places, so I don't actually think it's like, I don't have it scripted as part of the course because I've said it so many times. Whether you want to be somebody who focuses on one goal at a time or multiple goals at a time, both ways are successful. Both, you can be successful anywhere on that spectrum of 1 goals and 10 goals. It's just a matter of how much progress you're going to make over how much time. There's a member of the Patreon community who focuses on 1 goal at a time. Like that is she picks 1 goal a month and that is what she focuses on. And she really, that's the priority. That's all she does. She really focuses on that 1 goal, but she's been layering them on, every month since. Maybe that first month felt a little silly that that's the only thing she was focusing on, but then the next month she layered on another goal. And then she really focused on the new goal, but still was working on the other goal in the background. That works for her. I would get very bored if I only worked on 1 goal at a time in a month. I would get very bored. So I work on multiple goals, but I know that my progress is slower than hers. The progress she makes in 1 month on 1 goal is amazing because that's all she does. It's all she focuses on. And so either way works. You just have to figure out which way works for you and be okay with your personal lane and your personal progress, because that's when the comparisons kind of sometimes come in, is that we see somebody else making massive progress on something and we're like, well, why am I not making that much progress? Well, that might be the only goal they're focusing on. They might not be doing other goals. And if you're doing multiple goals because that's how you want to work, your progress is going to be slower. And it's just kind of appreciating that. And so I think Lisa realizing that you want to put another big goal aside while you focus on this other goal, it's going to make focusing on that other goal easier for you. And you're likely going to see much bigger progress. And then if that progress helps motivate you to get started back on the other goal, great. Maybe you realize that big goal is not a goal anymore and you can let it go. Holly, I really like the difference between goals and tasks. Yeah, I think that I see that a lot on people's power sheets, is that they list like, and don't get me wrong, there's no right answer, there's no wrong answer. So if you are someone who puts like schedule a doctor's appointment on your power sheets, if you've never haven't been to the doctor in years, that could be a big goal. Like that, making that step could be a big goal. And then of course that one's a goal because they don't let you like leave the doctor's office without scheduling your next appointment. So it's like, I did one, check that off, and now they're going to do it for me for the next however many months. But just realizing that those tasks are going to get done and those tasks have to get done. And so can our goals be more focused on things that excite us? Because when we clutter our goals with our tasks, then our goals feel like tasks. And that's not fun. That's not exciting anymore. And that's not to say that there's going to be goals that we're not excited about. Guys, like eating vegetables is not my favorite activity. And like, that's going to be a goal because that's good for me. I mean, that's really a task. Eating a vegetable is a task, but the more that we can have our goals be things that we are excited about and energized about, the more it bleeds it all over itself. Like all bleeds into each other. And so when we're excited about it, we're going to work on it. Whereas when it's littered with tasks, I think sometimes you look at your power sheets and you're like, I don't want to do any of that. When there might be things on there you do want to do, but you just can't see it because it's cluttered. So I feel like I just went on another little rampage about that, but I think it's a good reminder. All right. All right, well, if nobody has anything else, then I will let y'all go and I will see you next week. And I'll make sure to put the replay link, not that you guys need it, will be up soon. And I'll put the handout in earlier next week so everyone can get to it. Thank you all. Have a good night.